Hey, everybody. Before we get started today, I just wanted to let you know that I made the mistake again. I don't know why I keep doing this, where it's my AirPods that recorded the audio and not my fancy schmancy podcast microphone. So I'm sorry if my side of the audio today sounds rough and Jillian's sounds really good because she is a professional podcaster and knows how to use her mic. So I apologize for that. It'll be the same for this part one and for part two next week. But thanks for still listening. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Everyday Fi, where we explore the lives of everyday people pursuing financial independence. I'm your host, Meghan Combs, and I'm here to show you that you don't need $1 million book deal or a famous blog to reach Fi. By listening to people's stories who are just like you and me, you'll be able to forge your own path to financial freedom the everyday way. My guest today is someone many of you have probably heard of through other Fi podcasts and even from her own show. Jillian Johnsrud does indeed have a book coming out and became a successful blogger, podcaster, and mini retirement coach. But she did all of that after reaching financial independence. She, in fact, reached Fi in a very everyday way. And we're going to dive into Jillian's money story after a quick word from our sponsors. All right, and we're back. Hey, Jillian, thank you so much for joining me today. And how are you doing?
Thank you for having me. I am very excited to be here.
Great. Yeah, it's fun having somebody on here who I have heard on several other shows. So I'm super excited to get to know you more in depth. So I was very lucky to read your book a little bit beforehand, and a little bit about your story is in there. But of course, I want to know more. And so I was wondering if you would be open to sharing some of your kind of details of what your current or past job career was, where you live now, and anything else you'd like to share about yourself as kind of an introduction to people who might not know you on a personal level.
Oh man. Okay, yeah. I guess I don't know where to start, but we'll start at the beginning. I started working when I was really young. I did a construction job one summer where I was just like grunt labor. And then I worked at a gas station, and then I worked at a pizza place, and then I worked as a waitress. This trend kind of continued. I worked a bunch of kind of what I call like normal jobs. In college, I'm probably going to forget jobs here. I had a very brief stint at Bath and Body Works before I rapidly developed an allergy to fragrance, which persisted. It's been like 23 years and I'm almost past it now. But the first 5 years were brutal. So that was a bummer for like a
No.
3 week job. Like sometimes like I would literally start gagging if someone is wearing like perfume or cologne.
Yeah. I mean, those stores still exist and they're still pretty bad.
Oh, yeah. I
Yeah.
felt so bad. I was dancing tango a few months back. I was fine. And then I started dancing with this one guy, and my eyes started watering, and then my nose started watering. And tango's like a very close embrace. So, like, my face is right by his face, and there is so much fluid coming out of my face. And, like, I had to stop. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I don't know what's happening. And then I danced with him one more time, and it instantly happened again. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I think I'm having an allergic reaction to your cologne. Like, very embarrassing. Very embarrassing.
So obviously not a great tango partner right there.
Yeah, that job was not $1 an hour
Yeah.
that I made.
Oh my
And then I worked
gosh.
in a coffee shop.
Yes.
I ended up managing that coffee shop. And then we were living in southern Idaho at the time, and we moved to DC. And I worked for Starbucks for a while, and I ended up managing a Starbucks. I worked for a church, and then REI. And then I sold high-end mattresses and office chairs, which was really fun in the DC area. I got to meet like lots of very cool, important people. People who normally send their assistants out to do their bidding, but office chair and a mattress is very personal. So they like actually had to show up themselves, which was cool. And then I lived in Germany. And then when I came back here, I sold furniture. I did commission furniture sales. So I think, yeah, I might be forgetting one or two, but that's about my biggest work history.
Yeah. So it sounds like you didn't really have a career. You kind of were a let's go and see what we can do where we're living type, which is really cool. That's actually where I want to get to once I reach
Mm,
5 is just being able
yeah.
to do like the odd jobs here and there, which, everybody calls it coast fi, barista fi, whatever.
Mhm.
And, but it sounds like that's what you started with. So was there a reason that you didn't go for like a career? And then it also sound like you moved around a lot. Did that add into why it wasn't like a solid just career that you went off and did?
Oh, I grew up in a really small town and looked back and I've wondered what my thought process was. Because I was a very good student and I was very hardworking. And I could have had like a career, but I don't know, like, I don't ever remember having a conversation about that. Like, I don't ever remember someone being like, what are you going to do when you grow up? Like, you just look around and whatever job's there, you take that job and you do that thing. And I don't know if it's because of like in such a small community, like you just did what was ever available. Like, there weren't many people who, I don't know, like had like professions, like there weren't engineers or I didn't know lawyers or people who went in like to specific things. I honestly don't ever remember being like, here's the career path that I will pursue. And I think I definitely struggled a lot with kind of like a scarcity mindset when I was growing up. And there were a lot of money narratives that I kind of absorbed consciously or unconsciously. Like, I decided I kind of wanted to do more like helping professions I was more drawn to. And I definitely had this mindset of like, which is bizarre to me now, but the idea was like, if you're a good person, you're not going to make a lot of money. Like, if you're willing to be a bad person, then you can be highly compensated. And so it took me a long time. It was probably until my late 20s that I was like, wait a minute. I don't even think that's true. Where did this come from? Why am I still subconsciously kind of carrying this? Good people don't make a lot of money. And if you want to make a lot of money, you're not necessarily a bad person, but you're probably going to have to become a bad person to compromise your soul in some sort of fashion if you're going to be incredibly well compensated. Yeah, so I never picked a profession. The only thing that I consistently was interested and curious about was writing, being a writer, writing books. But growing up and throughout my 20s, I was chatting yesterday with an author friend of mine about this. I never pursued writing seriously because of that same money mindset. It was not a very entrepreneurial thing. Like, being an entrepreneur, being a creative, the mindset that I grew up around was like, that's kind of for suckers. You need jobs that pay you on Friday because you have bills to pay on Friday. And so if you're not getting paid on Friday, you're being an idiot. You're being foolish or you're being self indulgent. Like, these creative pursuits, these things with a long lead time before they might pan out, that's luxuries for different people. That's for rich people. Rich people can afford to do that. And so I never really seriously pursued writing until after I became financially independent because I had this mindset of now I've earned the right to do something that's indulgent. Like, now I'm the rich person who gets to be creative, which is kind of crazy. And I would never say that to anyone who's in their 20s. You should always have space for creativity in your life, no matter where you're at in your journey. I was too practical. I was too pragmatic. I knew we had bills to pay and just kind of like keep your head down and do the thing and put in the work. And maybe at some point I'll deserve to be able to be creative.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people who have that mindset, and I'm so curious of where it originates from, and we will get there. Don't worry. But I'm curious, like when you became interested in writing, how old were you? What was your first kind of practice with writing? What were you writing? What were you writing for? Who were you writing for? I'd love to hear that story.
Yeah, I started writing in high school because I had a really great English teacher, like I think a lot of writers. And thank goodness, I actually, in this book coming out, I specifically mentioned her in the acknowledgments because I was very dyslexic. I'm still very dyslexic. Spell check has kind of helped train me a little bit over the years, but I couldn't anything over like 4 or 5 letters. I couldn't spell. Anything with too many vowels, even now, if there's too many vowels, because I never learned to like truly read as a child. So I have basically no understanding of phonics. Like, I don't know how to sound words out. So vowels are very difficult for me. I learned to read because of, I think it was my fourth grade teacher, anyway, Mrs. Nelson, kept me after school every single day and forced me to read for like 30 minutes. And I slowly memorized the shape of each word because I couldn't sound the words out because I didn't understand phonics. And consequently, kind of a tangent, but because I never learned to like really sound things out and I just memorized the shapes of all the words, once I got through the huge learning curve of memorizing the shape of every word, I became an incredibly fast reader. And by the time like I graduated, like on my ACT scores, my reading speed and comprehension was by far my strongest suit because I can very, very quickly read because I can very quickly see the shapes of all the words and translate that into my brain.
That's amazing. Can I just pause on that
Yeah.
really quick? Because there are some people who see, like, oh, it's a disability and it hinders people from doing things, etc. But let me just call out here that you became a better reader than most people. Like, I am the slowest reader of all because every single phonic I have to read in my head. So there you go. And then also the fact that you are now a published author with a technical like disability. I don't even like to call it that, but a reading disability. That's incredible and super inspiring. So I just wanted to pause on that and say that. And yeah, you can continue.
Yeah, it was tough to expound on that a little bit more because I was terribly dyslexic and I was incredibly shy and I was from kind of a poor family. Like second, third grade, first grade, he looked at me and said, "Well, there's a winner. She's on a great trajectory of life." Because a lot of first and second and third grade is putting letters and numbers in the correct order, which I had zero capacity to do. So I looked incredibly slow. I looked like I was a very unintelligent person. It's one of the things I really do credit my biological dad for. I was always good at like big ideas, like the details, putting the letters and numbers in order, awful at it. But the big ideas I was really good at. And so I remember very specifically being in like second grade and we would do spelling tests and it was just an absolute nightmare. Like I just random letters is what I was writing down. And I remember thinking, God, I look so stupid. I look so stupid, but I don't think I am. Like, I think inside, I think I'm smart, but I get why everyone around me assumes I'm very stupid. Like, because I'm awful at all of this. But by the time I got to high school, my first writing was whatever was assigned by my English teacher. And my spelling was atrocious. Like, this is the late 90s. We really don't have spell check, even now. Even with like AI and Google, spell check is hard pressed to understand what I'm trying to say. It guesses right occasionally, but in the late 90s, it never guessed right. It was like, girl, we have no idea what you mean. So my spelling was just crazy. And thank goodness I had this teacher, Mrs. J, who was like, Annie, spelling is the least important part about writing. Don't you mind that at all. You just spell it however you want to spell it. I don't even care. I'll figure it out. She's like, the stories and the ideas and the emotion, that's what it's about. There are other people who know how to spell. The other people will take care of the spelling for you. You just write the stories. You just share the ideas.
Yeah. That's what editors are for.
Yo, my
Yeah.
editors, they earned every penny on
They
every
earn their
book I've.
money.
Oh my gosh. Absolutely, absolutely.
They're probably like, Jillian's writing a book again. Oh no. No, I'm just kidding.
No. Yeah. No, they're probably like rubbing their hands
That's
together,
great.
like, cha-ching, how many billable hours?
So we're gonna charge you hourly. Yes,
Yeah.
that's true. Oh, that's funny. Okay, so your teacher was very I love that you had a teacher like that though, because there are so many teachers who would go the opposite way. Like
Mhm.
I've known so many English teachers who are like grammar and spelling.
Mhm.
That's the most important part. And it's like, really? You think all of these authors that's what they were caring about when they were writing it by hand and, like, just trying to
Mhm.
get the ideas on the paper. I'm not sure that's true. And I get it. They're trying to teach you, right? And I think it's hard to teach somebody that level of creativity, but they can teach you something very mechanical. So,
Mhm.
I guess I get it. But I love that your teacher encouraged you and said, "No, you have a gift, and who cares if you can't spell?" And I would say just use talk to text because that'll figure it out for you. Or it'll convert words and you're like, "I'm pretty sure that's not what I said, but okay."
Yeah, and thank goodness because when
Yeah.
I first started writing online, like I wasn't earning any money. It was just like an expensive hobby. And so I didn't pay for Grammarly and for maybe the first year or two and the comments I got online, the amount of anger, the amount of hate, the amount of like disgust that people would express, how I was basically wasting their time and I was wasting their attention and I was like ruining their life with my spelling. And I was ruining the English language single handedly by incorrectly spelling things. But if it hadn't been for that teacher to kind of like, I had this foundation of like, no, it is the stories and it's the ideas that matter. I don't know how I would have pushed through like the amount of anger people expressed about my spelling.
Yeah, that's so impressive that you were able to just be like, "Whatever, I don't really care what you guys think." Also, you're ruining their day. Like you
Oh,
chose to read this. Like you didn't have to
for
read.
free.
Yeah, I'm like, what are you? Whatever. Yeah, I mean, they call them, grammar Nazis for a reason.
Mhm.
And I always say that I'm like, the English language didn't originate as it is today. It morphed over time. And it did that by how people speak and communicate
Mhm.
and how it changed. I mean, there's even words that used to be grammatically incorrect that are now grammatically correct because people just kept using it that way. I think nauseous is like one example that just comes straight to mind. It used to be that nauseated was the right way to say it. Now
Mm.
everybody said nauseous, and so now nauseous is correct. So it's just like language is ever changing. And I think being super rigid on language is, I feel like there's some control mechanism there that's deeper than the language part of it because I think that it's beautiful. And I'll just say one more point that, like, whenever I see a job that says, if you make one spelling mistake on your resume, we're going to throw it out. And I'm like, what? Really? I was like, why would you do that? Like, you're overlooking so many people who are talented who might have dyslexia. I actually called somebody out, a podcaster that I listened to, who said that on her show one time
Mm.
and she was talking about getting hired and career trajectories and all this stuff. And I wrote in and I was like, look, I don't think you should say stuff like that because you're basically saying that people who have potential learning disabilities and can't write perfectly are not talented enough to join your team. Like, because she basically said, if I see a spelling mistake on a resume, I'm going to throw it out. And when I wrote in, her show responded and they were like, actually, that's a really good point. So
Mm.
I don't know if I made a change there. I hope I did, but like, I would never do that. I look at the substance rather than just
Mhm.
the sprinkling on top. I don't know. That was a
There
bad metaphor, but whatever.
there is an incredible irony that my career now entirely revolves around writing words and sequences of numbers. And I'm just like, I took the thing I was literally the worst at and built an entire profession around it. Okay, yeah, that's fun. Why not?
Yeah, I love it. It's awesome. You're like, screw you. I'm going to do what I want. I love it. I'm so inspired by you.
To go back to my
Go
second
ahead.
grade self and be like, yeah, all this stuff that everyone thinks you're an idiot for, this is what you're going to specialize in, actually. This is why people are going to think that you're intelligent.
Oh, I wish we could go back to our younger selves and just show them and just be like, no, this thing that everybody's calling you weird for, it's what makes you so special and amazing as an adult. So keep doing it.
So, one more step kind of in this writing process, I started seriously considering writing a book because I loved books. When I was 19, I started going to the library. Where I grew up, we didn't really have a big library. And then I moved to DC and we had this, like, there's lots of big libraries. And so I would go and just walk the whole nonfiction section of the library, like literally row by row, and get books from every single shelf. So now I read at least a book a week, some weeks 5 or 6. So now I've read probably at least 1,000 nonfiction books. But I loved books. They became very life changing for me. So by my mid 20s, I was really interested in writing a book. But when I was 27, maybe, I had like a mental breakdown and I spent a month doing outpatient therapy, like 6 hours a day, which is, it's like boot camp. It's like doing, like gutting a house and doing a full house renovation. It's super intense. And it was amazing. It set me on a very different trajectory. But during that time, I was diagnosed bipolar. And I came out and I realized the only way I'm going to move through this and the only way I'm going to cope with this and figure this out is by being entirely honest. And I was a person that never wanted to make other people feel uncomfortable. I desperately, desperately put so much energy into like trying to meet other people's expectations and trying to be what they wanted me to be. And I realized, oh my gosh, like it's so much effort. And the best case scenario is I'm going to be a mediocre version of someone else. Like I'm never going to be the best version of me. So I came out of this and I was like, the only way through this is by being completely honest. And so I started blogging about my mental health and just being uncomfortably honest about it. And it was kind of like almost like a vulnerability, like training ground. But here's the wonderful thing. There's so many great things about having a mental breakdown. I highly recommend it. Like if you ever have the option, I would check yes on this because I struggled so much.
You're killing me. I'm sorry. I'm unmuting so you guys can hear me laughing so you don't think she's alone in her laughter. I love it. Okay, sorry. Continue.
So especially if you struggled with people pleasing and trying to conform and trying to meet people's expectations, you have a mental breakdown and everyone's very, very, very concerned. They're all super concerned. And then you come back and you can come back as the most honest, authentic version of yourself. And nobody will bat an eye. They're just like, "Are you okay? You're okay? No, this is weird and uncomfortable. But if you're good, we're good. No, just as long as do whatever you need to do, sweetie. Like just, oh, you want to talk about the sure, we'll talk about this. Just like you get a total reset on your personality, and everyone is so accommodating and nice. So it's a wonderful option that I think a lot of people don't take advantage of. But that was my first kind of like organized, structured. I tried to write every week. I blogged with a friend who was also bipolar, and that was a really helpful kind of start to this. And then I didn't start writing again until after we'd become financially independent. We decided to take a year off just to like reset and reassess. And I wrote on like this massive to-do list, something to do with writing. And that eventually became my original blog for like the OGs. It was Montana Money Adventures. And some people still think it's that. It hasn't been that in so many years. So many years. Let's not Google that. But yeah, I started that almost 10 years ago.
So what is it? Is it still exist?
I think it transfers to my name now, to JillianJohnsrud.com. I think I still own Montana Money Adventures. And this was back in the day where like almost everyone who wrote about money, this was like 9-10 years ago. It was so long ago. Almost everyone who wrote about money had monikers. So I was Mrs. Montana. So I was terrified of my family reading about me talking.
Right. Nobody used their name.
Like I was thank goodness I had talked so brutally honestly about being bipolar for like a couple years, because without that, I don't know if I would have had the confidence to like discuss finances.
Yeah. Well, so here's a question. What do you think was scarier, talking about your mental health that deeply or talking about finances that deeply? Because some people find both to be very scary to talk about.
So, talking about mental health with people I don't know is very challenging. And sometimes, honestly, it's still very challenging, which is part of the reason I do it, especially around bipolar. People have some wild assumptions. And sometimes they feel like vocalizing those assumptions to you, which is super uncomfortable. I
Yeah.
had I had someone I had mentioned I was bipolar, and they were like, "Oh, so how do you go off the rails? Is that with like sex or spending or drugs?" I was like, "Excuse me?" Like,
You you only get 3 options, Jillian.
I was just like, "Oh,
Wow.
this is not polite conversation."
So everybody who's listening, mental health is nuanced, y'all. Just so you know, it's nuanced.
They
That's funny.
wow,
Yeah,
probably
that sounds
watched
difficult.
like an episode of, I don't know, like
Yeah,
SVU crime
something.
show like 10 years ago. And it's like,
Mhm.
and now I carry the assumptions of all that. Like, I'm the worst case on their worst day. But it's part of the reason that I still talk about it a lot because while, oh my gosh, I am not a perfect human being, but I do live a somewhat functional life. I had a very long marriage. I've raised 6 kids. I have a house. I have a career. Not everyone is naked in a jail cell. So I feel like we need a couple examples of like people who kind of have their stuff together occasionally, at least.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder if it's like they knew somebody who had bipolar and they were like that. Because I know, like, my mom, she has very distinct ideas about what bipolar means because she
Oh.
dated somebody who was like
Mhm.
that. And I will say, though, that I suspect he probably didn't have bipolar. This was back in the, like, early 90s, so before
Mm.
they kind of had differentiations between, like, bipolar, manic depression, all of the different aspects of that, and he did do that thing where he would be like it was Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type, and
Mm.
so that's what she associates bipolar with, and so anybody who has bipolar, that's what she thinks it's gonna be. And I just think it's just one of those things where there's a misunderstanding that there is
Mhm.
so much nuance because it's a human brain. I mean, the human
Mhm.
brain is so complex and everybody is different. Everybody has neuroses, everybody has just issues, and they're all different. And because our entire experience of life has been different, right? So, yeah, for anybody, I love talking about mental health. I've been in therapy for 8, 9 years now. I'm going to specifically a fertility therapist now because
Mm.
of the journey I'm going on now for fertility issues and going through menopause at 37.
Mm.
And yeah, so I'm very open about it too. And it is interesting that people do have assumptions. And
Mhm.
I'm trying to approach it with like, you know what? I don't think they're coming from a bad place. I think they
Mhm.
are genuinely curious. They do have preconceived notions, and they're asking me to challenge those by asking me this question. So I'm going to do that. And that's kind of how I try to see it rather than like getting defensive or anything like that. Cause that's what I might have done in the past is get
Mhm.
defensive. But now I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try and approach this with like compassion for them and like being happy that they want to know more. So anyway, that's a tangent. But yeah, I'm with you.
Okay, so to wrap it back around to that question, with the general public, talking about mental health was hard. It's still hard, but I do it to give like a new data point because they've probably just seen people who are bipolar on their worst day. And I want them to see what bipolar looks like all the other days. So I'm willing to kind of carry the weight of that a little bit if that helps anyone else. But with money, it was super easy for me to talk to strangers about money. And with my family, it was really easy to talk to my family about mental health because well, one, because they didn't want to talk about it and they didn't really have any thoughts or opinions. But around money, talking to strangers, super easy. Having those conversations with my family was very difficult because there were so many really entrenched beliefs that not just in my family of origin, but really where I grew up. I grew up in a very small town in Montana. Most of my family was from very small towns in Montana, farming and ranching communities that even you look back just 100 years ago, my great grandparents, the way you had to show up in work and around money was like you had to work hard every single day or everyone dies. Like it was just a very real high stakes thing. And so that formed a lot of those money ideas in my family, but the whole community, like we were all on the same page of like, You just have to work super hard all the time. And if you're not working hard, something's wrong. Like, and you're not only endangering yourself, but you're endangering your family and you're endangering your community because this only works if we all work together.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's a beautiful segue into your money origin story. This is very well done. I love it. It's almost like you have a podcast or something and know how to do this. So I'm curious how you grew up with money. So, like you said, everybody in your entire town are from small towns, and working hard is in the veins of everybody who's there. So I'm curious what your parents did. Like, what were each of their professions, and did it ever change? And yeah, just curious about that.
Yeah, my biological dad did construction most of his life, and then he was also in the National Guard for maybe 30 years, a long time. And then my stepfather worked kind of adjacent to the farming ranching community at like the grain elevator in town. I grew up in a town of 800 people. My graduating class was 20 and we were one of the largest classes. And my mom just kind of did whatever job was there. You know, in a town of 800 there's not a huge economy, so there's a grocery store and you can be a lunch lady and there's like one restaurant and a gas station and a couple bars, like, so you kind of do whatever job works with around the family and is available at the time. So she did a lot of those kinds of jobs, but definitely none of that was incredibly lucrative.
While you were growing up, first of all, do you have siblings? And did you ever think about the kind of status your family was in, or the money aspect of your family, or whether or not you were poor or working class or middle class or upper class? Did you ever have those kinds of thoughts in your head, or did anybody in your family talk about anything like that, including your siblings or your parents?
Yeah, I definitely felt poor growing up. That wasn't ever present, not just compared to my peers, but in the necessity of life, of like, do we have enough money to pay the water bill? Like, is there enough money to buy food? Like, I was always aware of like what bills were coming up. And, I kind of joke that like I had like just the sweet spot of trauma that like made me a very successful adult because I became so hypervigilant and very motivated and very hardworking and like I will figure my crap out and like resilient and tough and I'll take care of myself. There's kind of like this sweet spot. And I like to think that we hit that nail right on the head of like the perfect amount of trauma. And it keeps my therapist well employed. So really, it's working out great for everyone. But I was very hyper aware of like bills coming up, things that had to get paid. And so very quickly, and because like I'm super conscientious and very hyper vigilant, I became the one that like would stockpile cash even as like I would say by the time I was like 5th or 6th grade, because I was like the family bank. If the water bill was coming up and I know we didn't have the like $22 that was needed, like I could loan that to my mom to make sure the water doesn't get turned off. And then like during payday, she would pay me back. And so I was like the family emergency fund. And it was a role that I was really happy about. It gave me some sense of control, some sense of safety.
When did you take on that role? How old were you?
I started worrying about us having enough when I was about 2. I
That's really young. What prompted that worry? Is this your first money memory? Like this worry that you got when you were 2?
Mhm. Yeah. And I don't remember being 2 exactly, but I must have observed something. I must have noticed something or felt something because I would hide milk and cereal in my closet because I had a little brother and I was scared that we wouldn't have enough milk for him. So I would take milk from the fridge if I saw that we had enough and I would hide it to make sure that he had enough, which of course, like the milk would spoil then. It was like very counterintuitive. It was an unproductive habit, but I had that hypervigilance of like, this is my responsibility. It's my responsibility to make sure that like everyone has enough food. It's my responsibility to make sure people's needs are met. And I'm going to do that whatever way makes sense. So, yeah, I was about 2.
Okay. And why do you think you took it upon yourself as your responsibility?
I don't know if I perceived this or if it's just the joy of being like the firstborn daughter, but I trusted myself far more than I trusted anyone else around me. And that has been a lifelong process to unwind. Because in any given situation, if I'm going to trust myself to take care of something, if I'm going to trust myself to figure something out and to make a plan and to get through it versus trusting other people to take care of me, oh, lordy, lordy. Like me and my therapist, I'm 42, we still unpack this. Like, you can trust other people to care for you. And I'm like, yeah, but should you?
And I, are you sure?
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you call yourself you and your siblings like latchkey kids? Like, did your parents kind of leave you to kind of take care of yourselves or anything like that? It's very common in the 90s and 80s.
No, my mom was incredible, incredibly present in her own way, just rising so far above even what she had been given and just like absolutely making the best of every situation. And so there were a lot of things that were hard and complicated and weird, but yeah, but she was really exceptional.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I asked because my brother and I were latchkey kids, and I was the oldest daughter, sort of. I say sort of because I have 7 siblings, but like
Eh.
they're all like steps and halves, and I didn't grow up with most
Mm.
of them. So I am technically the oldest when it comes to being raised, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Anyway, but yeah, we were mainly latchkey kids because my mom was a single mom
Yeah.
and she was very career driven. So she like rose to be a CFO and like,
Mm.
and that obviously before working from home was like a regular thing. She had to go into an office and she usually came home 6:30 at night. And so we usually did our chores, did our homework, made dinner for ourselves, and were there watching TV when she came home. And so that's why I asked, because I'm very much like you. Like, I find it hard to trust people to do something to the point that I'm actually like making a conscious effort to try to do that now that I'm married, because I've been married
Mhm.
for like 4 months. So, and I noticed I was like, ooh, my husband is an adult who has lived his
Mhm.
entire life and not died. So he obviously knows what he's doing and I can trust him to do things. And
Yep.
so I've been trying to make a conscious effort of letting him handle certain things or not trying to be too involved in things that I don't need to be involved in. And like he's selling his house. When we got married, we decided to keep our houses separate, but everything else is combined. And so he's selling his house right now. And I was in it with him, like listening, and I could feel my control wanting to like eke
Mm.
in and like tell him what to do. And I was like, nope, I need to stop doing this because A, it was burning me out. It was like one more thing I had to care about. And B, I was like, he's an adult. He should do this on his own because he also needs to learn how to do this on his own too. So I was like, I'm just going to take a step back. I'm going to take a step back and he can just let me know what happens. And if something happens where that wasn't what I would have done, I'm just going to, whoa, great, honey. Good job. So that's why I asked because I am like that. But I think it's because I was a latchkey kid. So
Mm.
yeah, that's very interesting. Do you remember your parents talking about money between each other, whether it was your biological dad and mom or your stepdad and your mom?
No, I mean, there wasn't a lot of conversations about anything, but definitely not around money. There was a lot of energy around money. There was a lot of emotion around money, but I don't think any of it was ever really discussed. Yeah, my mom was definitely the one who figured out the budget and managed things and like made everything work. And so I saw her be really diligent in that. And it was, I think, informative. Like it was helpful because the one upside of being really poor is that things usually work best if you're like very diligent. There's just not a lot of margin for error. So sometimes the narrative of like poor people are bad with money is hilarious to me because The poor people I've met are awesome with money. Like nobody budgets more. Nobody knows when their money's going in and out more. Like I have no idea when my mortgage payment goes out of my bank account. I have no idea what my credit card. Poor people, they know like not just the day. They're like, that happens at about 10:30 in the morning. So I need to make sure that we deposit this money at 8:30 in the morning because like our mortgage payment's coming out. And they're really on top of it. Like all of the grocery shopping happens like the day you get paid, everything's planned out, everything's scheduled out. And so I think that was helpful to see someone just be very intentional, very conscientious around their finances.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I love that you said that because I think it's a common misconception that poor people are poor because they mismanage their money. And it's like, you don't choose to be poor. Like, that's not how the world works. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. They know where every single cent is going. I will say, when I was poor, and I say that in quotes because I was never like that kind of poor, but when I was living on my own in New York making nothing, I knew where every single
Mhm.
dollar was going. If I had cash, I knew where it was. If it was in one account or another account or in a pocket or in a purse, I knew where it was.
Mhm.
And it's funny because I haven't changed much, and yet I would definitely be considered on the wealthier side now
Mhm.
because I've increased my income and savings and things like that. But I still, like, I know the day and even the hour when my paycheck is going to come in. Not because I need to pay a
Mhm.
bill, but just because that's still
Mhm.
there. So I think that's so interesting that you say that because I'm like, wait, do I still have this tendency? And
Mhm.
do I need to think through whether or not that's helpful anymore? I want to be more like you, where I'm like, I don't know when my mortgage is coming out, whereas I'm tracking my Monarch app every single morning. What's coming out?
Yeah.
What's going on? And it's like,
Yeah.
what is that doing for you?
There is an emotional energy cost that at some point your ROI on that emotional energy cost is less because it probably doesn't matter if it comes out today or tomorrow or the day after. In my observation, and I've over the last 10 years, I've gotten to work with a lot of people in their finances and see a lot of people's finances. Just so my casual observation, the demographic that is the worst with money are people who grew up upper middle class and became upper middle class. And one of the most common money mindsets I hear in that group is they decided to become upper middle class because they didn't want to pay attention to their money. Because only poor people have to budget, only poor people have to make choices based on finances, and they never wanted to have to do those things. They wanted to just do whatever they wanted to do. It's so easy for them to end up broke and have no idea why. Somewhere in that like 90 to $300,000 range, and not in the FI community. It's the exception to the rule for sure. But people who grew up in that income range and became in that income range, they didn't learn that skill set growing up typically. And yeah, for better or worse, there's no fear, there's no anxiety, there's no scarcity, there's no ness around it. It's just a very relaxed mindset, but they have no idea what's going on with their finances.
Which on the surface kind of sounds good. Like, oh, they don't think about money. That sounds great. And
Mhm.
they can do
Yeah.
whatever they want. And it's like, but they're also not realizing that there's consequences.
Yeah.
They're probably going to have to work well into their 70s to support the lifestyle that they have. If
Mhm.
they are required to stop work before that, like many people are because of ageism or disabilities or whatever, I'm not sure they would know what to do because they might not have enough to retire on, right? But you don't see that right away when you're in your 30s and 40s and even 50s. And yeah, these are the folks who have the biggest houses, biggest cars. Every single person in the family has a car. Every single
Yeah.
person in the family has a toilet in the house. Like that kind of lifestyle. Yeah, and it's the average American, right? And I could so go on a tangent here about capitalism, but I'm not going to. Yeah, so I'm definitely with you on that. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. That was part one with Jillian Johnsrud. And tune in next week for part two and the rest of her story. Thanks for listening to the Everyday Five podcast. If you're loving this show, here are some things you can do. Number one, subscribe in your favorite podcast player and share the show with your friends and family. You can also find us on YouTube now. Some of the videos actually have our faces. Number 2, please leave a review. I am always looking for ways to improve the show. Number 3, check out my website, everyday-fi.com, where you can listen to all the episodes and leave comments for myself and the guests. Number 4, if you're interested in sharing your own financial independence story and connecting with other community members, you can find a submission form at everyday-fi.com/podcast. And lastly, number 5, join my Patreon membership for only $5 a month at patreon.com/everydayfi podcast. This is a one-woman show, so every little bit of support really helps. See you next time as we continue to go down the path to financial freedom.